This podcast is brought to you by Enrollment Resources, innovations in enrollment management. Learn more at enrollmentresources.com.
It's Gregg here, everybody, from Enrollment Resources, and welcome to our little conference call. And we're going to teach you about a way to grow your business, your school, with very little effort and without having to spend additional money. It's a real oddball little approach, but it works exceptionally well. And so take notes and ask questions. This is going to be a teaching session, and we'd love to help you out today. I'm going to make some introductions. Tom King is one of Shane and my colleagues. He's a C-level person at Enrollment Resources, and he oversees that all our clients who are using our software are happy and functioning and adopting our software, amongst other things. Tom speaks at conferences as well. Tom, welcome. I'd like you to introduce my business partner, Shane Sparks.
Aha. So welcome, everybody. This is Tom, and joining us here is Shane Sparks, co-founder here at Enrollment Resources, Chief Operating Officer, and oversees our fulfillment department, making sure that all of our clients are getting phenomenal service and the products that can help them drive their conversion rates.
Cool.
Thanks,
I'd like to... Hey, Shane, welcome to our talk today.
Hey.
So I'd like to introduce Brian Willett. Brian is a very interesting guy. He helps people improve their conversions in the area of admissions, and Brian has a lot of interesting things to say. We like Brian because he's insightful, and he actually thinks, and he's an engaging guy, and so we're blessed to have Brian here on our call today. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Greg, glad to be here. Excited to see what we're going to talk about today. You know, I always say I like to show up to see what I have to say. You know what I mean?
There you go. That's kind of how we all work here to a degree. So let's get rolling. I remember in a previous life I had this realtor as a coaching client, and this realtor made on average 4 times the amount of income that the other realtors did on average in the market that he was in. And it was consistent year in and year out. And this guy was kind of dull. He didn't have a flamboyant personality. He wasn't terribly persuasive. Yet he consistently just made hundreds of thousands of dollars every year where the other realtors did not. And finally I sat him down and I said, okay, do you have a system? Do you have a secret? And he said, yeah, I do. I have a system and a secret. And so what his system was is that all the tasks and tactics that he did as a realtor, just like all the other realtors, he made a point of doing them 2 to 3% better than all the other realtors. So he didn't try to do any wild, crazy things. He just a little bit better on every single item that he had to deal with as a realtor. Shane, that's an interesting little insight for our realtor friend, eh?
Yes, and Greg, you often talk about the kind of first loser, right? You know, and given that the customer's only going with one school, right? It's not like they're going to buy a little bit of school A and a little bit of school B and a little bit of school C, right? So that 1%, if that's the difference maker, it's the 1%, the winner gets everything, and the second place, even if, gosh, they're so close, so close, first loser, nothing for you.
Yeah, no soup for you. And then, if you're first loser too often, then, you're eating out of a dumpster, metaphorically speaking. I mean, Tom and Brian, who came in second place to Usain Bolt, in the last Olympics? Nobody. I don't know. Shane doesn't know.
Yeah.
But he was
right.
10/100ths of a second behind Usain Bolt, like a blink of an eyelash.
He's really fast, almost the fastest.
But do we know who that guy is?
No.
No, of course
not. No
not.
one cares. And nobody cares.
Nobody.
It's sad, and it may be not nice, and it may be not fair, but that's life, right?
It is. It's hard. It's hard. Life is hard. I mean, the Buffalo Bills back in the 90s, thereabouts, they had an amazing team. Did they win the Super Bowl? No. Bunch of first losers. Brian, are you a Bills fan?
Yeah. No, I'm not a Bills fan, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, being from Kentucky, you know, I always say, you know, who was the runner-up in the Derby, you know, last year? Who was the runner-up when American Pharaoh, you know, became the first Triple Crown winner in my lifetime? You know,
right?
And so nobody remembers those things, and so your realtor friend there had it figured out.
So how do we help these folks be the American Pharaoh in their market?
Well, that's a great analogy. So what we're going to do today is we're going to teach you folks on the school side listening today. We're going to just leave you with half a dozen things that you can take away immediately and put to work. And what you'll do is you'll see a rise in your revenue, some incremental rise in your revenue for a little bit of effort as after this talk today. And we're going to basically get you kick-started in thinking about how to take all those 20 or 30 engagement points, branding points, and strategic alliance points that are available to you in your school and make them just 1, 2, 3% better. So let's get started. So back in the day, there was this famous advertising guy named David Ogilvy, and his agency was in Manhattan, and they'd done some amazing campaigns over the years. And famous guy, and he had stated that the success of these campaigns were all steeped in little 0.5%, 1%, 2% wins. So one example that he gave was that when you have a headline, okay, on the landing page or on your program pages of your website, that if you have a period at the end of that headline, 11% fewer people will move on and read the rest of the body copy, and then those 11% in not reading the body copy will reduce the lead ratio. Not as many people will fill out a lead form. Shane, to me that seems insane. A 1%, not even, it's like just dropping a period off of a headline is going to increase readership 11, 12%. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, gosh, I love David Ogilvy. So this is pre-internet, remember, when all this testing happened, and he started, so his company Ogilvy and Mather started doing serious testing in probably the 60s. And through the rest of his life, and it was based on difficult testing methodologies that we've now solved with the internet. So the psychological belief that the reason that's true, that period at the end of the sentence, is that it gives a psychological end, right? You've completed the thought, it's done, and you can move on, and so it doesn't create tension. There's a famous copywriter named Joseph Sugarman, and his formulas one we use and his belief was the purpose of the headline is to get the prospect to read the subhead. The purpose of the subhead is to get them to read the first line in the body copy. The first line in the body copy purpose is to get them to read the second line, and so on and so forth. In that when you construct sales copy, right, advertising copy, which could be a website or a landing page, you're trying to sort of just keep them rolling. And the longer you keep them rolling, the more likely they are to make an inquiry at the end of that journey.
Right.
The period subheads, engaging, conversational tone and copy, all those things influence whether somebody reads it or not. And we know from extensive studies over the last, it's like 15 years we've been doing this now, that people do read, and that the principles that David Ogilvy uncovered, in the 50s and beyond, hold true in 2019. It's fascinating.
So what's interesting then is that Sugarman and Ogilvy and Claude Hopkins and all these guys from 100 years ago, 50 years ago, they would agonize over the headline because 80% of the people will read the headline and drift away, and we don't want that figure to be 80%. We want it to be 50%.
Well, okay. Can I jump in?
Well, there's one more thing I'd like to say first, and then jump in.
Yes.
So within that construct of that headline, when there's a period at the end of that headline, which is good grammar, and the English graduates roll their eyes and want to gag, but it's a signal to complete a thought. So they're making a judgment on completing a thought, and then they jump off and they read something else, because what was said in the headline is not enough to go and compel them to read on. But if you take the period out at the end of the headline, the mind's eye will be such that it'll just keep reading 3, 4, 5 words into the subhead. So now we've gone from reading the headline, and the subhead, and it evolves into 11% more people reading the entire ad. Sorry, yeah. Shane. Yeah, so jump in.
Oh, yes, those are all true things. Those are all true, and they're as true today as they were 50 years ago. People, we haven't really, culturally we've changed a bit, but our minds, or the psychology, the wiring that drives human behavior, that hasn't changed. What has changed, though, is that back in the day when they did these tests, it was expensive and difficult to get a message out there, right? So you're running an ad in, the Wall Street Journal, even the local paper. That was print. It was expensive. Great craft and effort went into every single word in the advertising because they're spending so much money and there's so much effort to do it. With the internet, right, with websites, it's easy to put stuff up, change it, and I think there is a tendency to be a bit more cavalier about protecting the integrity of that real estate. Does that make sense?
Online real estate.
Yeah, and so just because it's easy doesn't make it not important. And I think that's the periods aside, that's the really important takeaway, right? Because the power of that headline and the power of the subhead and the power of the good copywriting, gosh, that's 80% of the persuasion, right? The graphics and the colors and the logo and the photos, all that stuff, that's maybe 20% of it. But the majority of the persuasion is in the words you use.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to jump in here, Greg.
Yeah, please. Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, I've seen a lot of, or even purchased a lot of products that were the best marketed, right? Had the best campaigns, meaning they were the best marketed, and they weren't very good products. Whereas, there's a lot of products that are very, very good. They just don't have the right marketing around it. And so it really, it doesn't matter. It's not about the best product. It really comes down to what's the best marketed, And I have a guy that is an author, and he says, one of his first books, someone pointed out, and it's a best-selling book, Wall Street Journal, etc. Someone sent him an email and said, there's 100, there's 100 different grammatical errors in this book. And he said he responded to him and said, look, it's not about the best written book. It's about the best sold book. And and so, and that goes back to, making sure, that headline obviously is just critical because that's the first thing people see. And if it doesn't capture people, then, you're already down by a certain percentage, right? You increase.
You're down a pint, man. So
yeah.
yeah. So the thing is that In terms of marketing, in terms of admissions, in terms of interpersonal communication, in terms of what people read and what they watch and see, marketing is, as Shane likes to say, as the lifespan of a fruit fly. You've got, a little headline to grab and start a relationship. Video, radio, TV ads. You've got, I think it's 5 seconds. If you notice if you're watching television, that the networks that are driven by ad revenue, when there's an ad on by, say, McDonald's or what have you, every time the visual image changes, just snap your fingers. And you'll find that in a 30-second ad, you may have 8 or 10 times you've snapped your fingers. And that's because these guys that make these ads, they change the visual picture to physiologically force you back to looking at the screen. Because what they've learned is if you can't grab someone in 3 to 5 seconds, you're going to be drifting, looking elsewhere, not paying attention to the ad. So this is a little nasty little tactic they use to bring you back. So the point being here is that whether it's a period that, by the way, everybody who's listening, go back to your websites, eliminate all the periods from your headlines. So that's a bit of homework that we want you to do. That's your first little takeaway. But the point being is that we're dealing in seconds and words, and so we got to focus on that stuff. And so here's another example. We know that, regarding, as an example, face-to-face meetings, the first 8 seconds a prospective student, they'll judge an admissions rep. And if they judge them favorably, then that will give that rep 30 seconds to anchor the relationship. And then, if successful, that gives the rep 2 minutes to connect and mutually qualify at kind of a high level. And if the rep can get through those 3 layers, then it's a real hot mess to kind of push through that. Then, and only then, do they have a chance to help the student gain clarity on this big lifelong career path that they're undertaking. So like the headline subhead kind of an approach here, Brian, it really is the same with interpersonal relationship as it regards to, admissions reps. Thoughts on that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Same, as you said, same exact kind of concept. And, and I like the way you broke it down there. But yeah, that first 8 seconds, the prospective student or anybody in general in any kind of buying or information session is saying, first of all, do I like this person? That's the first question they're asking. Do I like this person? I mean, let's just be honest about it. And we try to size people up. It's happening immediately, whether we're thinking about it or not, but it's going on. Do I like this person? The second question the prospective student is asking is, can this person help me? And so whether it's face-to-face, over the phone, and I know we'll hit on that later, but, that's what's going on in their head. And so what can you say to, get credibility, right, to say, to come across, let's just say, somewhat relational, building rapport, as we like to call it. And then secondly, move it into that phase where we can show them that we can add value, that we can provide some type of value to them.
But if you don't lock down that 8 seconds and that 30 seconds, the admissions rep won't earn the right. The person might spend an hour with them, but in their mind they're thinking about what they're having for dinner. So
right. Yeah, absolutely.
It's something. So Tom, along with Brian's saying, in addition to what Brian was just speaking to, there are the people that the admissions rep are talking to that have different value sets, moral standards, filters on how they view the world. Their social styles are usually there's 4 or 5 social styles. So what the heck? I mean, how do you deal with that? So you have 8 seconds, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, and then 20 minutes, and then you're dealing with these people that have all this matrix of views and filters and ways they want to be communicated to. It's getting, it's like three-dimensional chess, eh, Tom?
Absolutely. I think, just to jump on what Brian said, I mean, you've got that first 8 seconds, of, do I even like this person? Do I even want to talk to them? And then hopefully the rep, presents that great wow first impression. This can also be on the phone as well as face-to-face. And then people, the emotional connection is important. So people buy from people they trust, and people trust people they like. And then they also will attach to people who believe the same things they do. So having a really great, explanation of services. I don't like the word an elevator pitch necessarily, but a really good explanation of what it is that you do and why you do it. What do you believe? Why do you believe that? And how are you different? Something that really can connect with that prospect to see that prospect is believing and connecting with the person, and then having some additional insight through some type of a pre-qualification tool. Like our virtual advisor or something along that line, where we can gain a little bit of insight on what their social styles are so that you can best adapt to that person's style. And again, I'm not big into the whole mirroring and all of that other stuff, but I do believe that if you know that somebody's a driver style person or somebody's just an expressive type person, if you can communicate in a style that they like and agree with, and that they can make an emotional connection with, you're giving yourself that leg up. And we know in admissions, and I think Brian can probably confirm this as well, that it's all about strategy and probability. What strategies can you employ that increase the probability of your success? And that's knowing how to adapt to that prospect, knowing how to greet, how to create that emotional connection. Will make you a lot more successful and improve your.
So Shane, along the lines of what the gentlemen are saying, one strategy to go and get through that first 8 seconds is to not stink. Right? Well, no, okay, it's a stupid comment. I grant you that, but I am accurate. And the point being is that inside that bucket of 8 seconds, Shane, there are several things that a person can do to right-size their odds of getting to the 30 seconds, and so on and so on. So
smile
Shane,
warmly. Smile warmly.
Yeah, smile warmly.
Smile. Maybe not come off like you're, focused attention. I was reading an article on active listening, right? Which it seems simple, right?
I know what you say by active listening, Shane. Tell me more.
Yeah, well, there you go. Active listening. That's, gosh, most of us do not feel heard in our lives, right? This is a silly thing, but if you're breaking it down into 8 seconds, with 8, 30, 2 minutes, 20 minutes, which I think is a great way to think about it, right? Okay, how do I make a good impression in 8 seconds? Hey, say hello in a friendly way, smile, be well-dressed but not too well-dressed, warm but confident, and not overeager to, not overeager, not overfamiliar. Right?
Start with hello, make eye contact, but not in a creepy way.
Yeah. I'm really glad you came in today. I'm looking forward to learning more about what you want. That would be a nice thing.
So really, I think the assignment for the people who are listening in our talk today is to take those 8 seconds, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 20 seconds, grab Tom or Brian or whomever as a facilitator maybe, and just brainstorm what are all the favorable things to put in those little buckets. And it will, just going through that exercise alone will stack the odds in the favor of a rep, and maybe their conversion rate goes up, 10% overall.
I have a story. May I?
Okay. Yes, please.
There was a book written, some time ago by a guy named Malcolm Gladwell called Blink. And in this book, he describes the ability of human beings to make snap decisions with incredible accuracy, and that the more time, in many cases, the more time we give to a decision, the less accurate our decision is, right? And we're able to just, with not very much information to make determinations they're surprisingly accurate. That's what you're talking about is, and so that gut check, right? How do I feel? This is what's happening. Does this feel good or not? That gut check, those moments, are what kind of I think we're talking about here. And so, as a leader in an organization, your gut check on your people is kind of the first blink or the first slice of this. And if you think there's a problem, there probably is, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think maybe an action that can be taken for the people on the call is if you buy into this and think about it in these, increasingly less granular time frames, have some kind of discussion or training or brainstorm with the staff. If you can get the admissions people to understand it and kind of buy into that idea, it helps them frame themselves. It helps them.
It increases their batting average, and it allows them to better create an empathetic environment with a prospective student, so that you can help that student go and break a cycle of poverty or improve their avocation versus just a crummy job. It's about creating kind of tactical little buckets of assets, arrows in the quiver, that can be used to get a prospective student to a point where you can do some good quality work with them to help them improve their career path. And then I guess the thing is if you do improve the conversion rate by 10%, call it 2 students a month, that's like $500,000 a year per rep, which is corporately very good. I want to switch back here now, back into the lead gen side. Okay, Shane, listen, we did this test, this crazy test. Katie Ellen in our office did a test she had a gut, and she said, what if in our headlines, if we put the word get into the headline, like get a career in blah, and it's like an innocuous thing. It's like the period coming off a sentence. It's adding the word in, get. And tell a story. It's like a 30% increase in lead flow. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was. It's become our get the skills to be whatever is our go-to headline now. It's been our control. It's called the control in testing. So the control just means the one that is the current winner. We test things on an ongoing basis. And the headlines, of course, are so important. So we've tested many headlines over the years. The get the skills. It was, I think, 24% or 28%. It was one of those two. I can't remember. Improvement when we had run it, and then we've retested against that headline I don't know how many times over the years. And it's super fascinating. So why is the get or get the skills so powerful? I think it's an action word. It implies a benefit, right? Who doesn't want to get something? But
if I can jump in,
yeah.
I think if you and I are having a beer and looking at each other about this test or talking about it, we don't 100% know, do we?
No, that's the fun thing about. That's why testing's so interesting, and that's really what, to me, that's the most interesting part of the work we do, and the biggest benefit to digital marketing is the ability to test these kind of things with accuracy in a relatively easy way, right? Back to the Ogilvy example. In the old days, if you're testing headlines, you're literally physically counting coupon returns, or like documenting phone calls, which is a huge margin of error.
Or testing radio copy, you have to plow through $20,000 in radio buy to get that nailed down.
Yeah, now you can do it a lot quicker. Yeah, now you can do it a lot quicker. You can see pretty quickly your results. And I think there's benefits and challenges to that today. Obviously, sometimes we don't test it enough, right? We think, we got a small sample size and we run with it. So that's the downside to the quick response, but obviously more upside than downside.
Oh, exactly, Brian. I mean, Tom, we have a thing where we tell people if some enrollment management guru or whatever says they have a huge fail-safe idea, you run as fast as you can to get away from that person because they're lying. And nobody, Tom, has the big home run idea, or rarely do. It's really about incremental testing of these tiny little things, which through an iterative process will get people to best practice and to maximum revenues. You've done a lot of this kind of work. Pile in here. Tell us.
You're exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, really, there's not gigantic breakthroughs that are just earth-shattering anywhere. In fact, many things are rehashed from old ideas with tweaks to them. So really, it's how well can you improve the individual processes? Can you make a slight change or a test here? Does it improve you 1% or 2 or 3 or 4 as you go through? And what I think fear of failure prevents people from really trying a lot of these things. They're afraid that, if I mess with my website, I could kill my traffic, and I won't have any leads, and I won't be able to make my start, and what have you. Or I can't train my people on a different greeting or entry because I can't take them away from being on the phone. So I think it's fear of failing, and again, failure is where all of the great ideas come from. You've got to fail numerous times to find some of these little things that work, and that's where the groundbreaking the great breakthroughs come from.
Well, an interesting analogy there is that Google, Facebook, Amazon, all these guys, FANG, I believe the group are called, all came out of the 2000 .com collapse. Failure everywhere. And this is a message to those listening who are in the not-for-profit sector. In making little 1% tests, you can put safety nets underneath, but you need to have somebody above you say it's okay to embrace failure. And in like a bureaucratic business model where job security is preeminent, and you need to create a culture to fail, and it's kind of it's a gutsy thing to do, but it allows you to. That's the best way to go and navigate your way out of these problems. The thing about it is, though, there's opportunities to import from other industries. I'm shifting direction here a tiny bit. For instance, here's something for everybody. Go back to your website, go to your photographs, and then take best practice from magazines and write a caption underneath the photographs, okay? And what you'll find is more people will fill out lead forms. Now, Shane and I we have some guesses as to why, but it doesn't really matter. Test it, and you'll find maybe your lead flow might go up 7%. Easy thing to do. So there's some homework for you guys. Here's another one. Okay, I'm going to flip this to Brian in a sec. Admissions reps make outbound calls, maybe 30, 40 calls, 50 calls a day. Some of these corporate guys, 100 calls a day. We'll call it 40. And they are leaving phone messages for people. And so let's just stop and create a notion that the phone message is a radio ad that has an audience of one person instead of 10,000. And so if that's true, if that notion is true, then you can take the best practices from direct response marketing, the ads for ab busters and corn removal medicine and all that, bring that split testing of direct response toward that phone message and have the admissions reps split test different ways to leave a message and have the discipline to do it. And after 6-7 renditions of testing, you should be able to create a 5 to 10% lift to the number of people returning your calls. So, Brian, people might say 5%, big deal. That's nothing. But, Brian, we run the math, and the numbers are pretty big, aren't they?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's staggering, honestly. If you want, everyone can go online and Google search the very title of this webinar, which is, if you just do 1% a day more than everyone else, you will do 38% better than everyone else at the end of the year. You will be 37 to 38 times better than everyone else, because it's the law of compounding interest. And so,
there you go.
So you can just look at it. There's a great book, and again, I encourage everyone to read it. I study habits, right? Because habits are what drive us every single day. They say anywhere from 50 to 70% of what we do every single day is habitual, meaning we don't have to think about it. And so when you fall into that habit, right, it's hard to get out of it, right? It's you take the same path to work every day, right? You go to the same coffee shop. You take the same path into the office, whatever it is. And so if you think about the habits that are created when you're just making phone calls, what if you could get a 1% lift by testing, right? By just testing a few different processes, as you said, Gregg. I worked with a guy a long time ago. We had a high school program at the university, and he tested how many inquiry cards he would get based off the color of his tie. And so, you just got to take a step back and say, let's be more methodical about our approach to admissions, recruitment, and success for that matter. And, there's some things you can do, but you have to force yourself to do those things. It just doesn't happen by accident, because that's what habits are. And so
that's it. And so split testing is a contrived, methodical process that doesn't cost money, doesn't take extra time, but it does require a little bit of discipline. And in this phone message example, if somebody leaves, I'm going to say 20 phone messages a day, that's 440 a month. 5% more people reach back to them, we'll say, conservatively. It usually is 10. That's 22 additional meaningful conversations. And so the typical conversion rate, Tom, when somebody gets somebody on the phone having a meaningful phone conversation, was a 10-20% range along those lines.
To set an appointment with them, or just to have a conversation?
No, if you get someone on the phone and you're having a chit chat with them, that's typically a 10 to 20% turning into a student, something like that.
Oh, turning into a student. Yeah, absolutely. I think about 20% of the people that you'll have a phone call with will eventually turn into a student.
Sure, so that's in this silly example, 4 students a month. That's 50 students a year. It's $1 million in additional revenue per rep per annum. Why go buy a bunch of disgustingly crappy third-party leads, Shane, when you can just do some internal testing like that? Shane, you want to talk to that? Is it?
Oh yeah, gosh,
Well, okay, let me reframe it for you, Shane. So, we improve websites for our clients by improving the conversion rates, by dropping periods, adding in the word get. Like, we have a toolkit of 30-odd things that we can apply to a website to improve the conversion rate. And let's just say we improve the conversion rate by 1% even. And let's say a school is 3% to start with. It's like a 25% improvement in lead flow.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so if we're talking about like website conversion, and let's define it just so everyone's clear on the call. We talk about website conversion, we're saying of the traffic you already get, right? If you get, 10,000 people that come to your website, or 1,000 or 500, whatever it is, what percentage of those convert to a lead, right? So if it's 1,000 and it's 3%, 2 to 3%, which is kind of typical, that means you're getting, 20, 30 leads per 1,000 visitors, right? And so that 1% improvement, which could be the period on the head of removing the period on the headline, or better copy, or split testing, or as Brian said, kind of being conscious of habits. Like, I think that unconscious behavior is, the habitual behavior, if it's not challenged, right? If you're not saying, well, hey, is this the best sales proposition, or is this the best thing we should be saying about, we can be saying about our score? Is this the best description, or the best, if we don't challenge those things, nothing changes and performance stays the same, right? So that 1% improvement on that 1,000 visitors, that's an extra 10 leads. That's an enrollment.
Yeah.
That's 12 students. That's whatever that is, $150,000.
You don't have to spend money or hire people.
No.
You just look inward and have some self-discipline. So I think we're getting close to being out of time, and there might be some questions. So the three of you get a shot at kind of leaving one last little pearl here for those listening. So, Brian, let's start with you. Is there any one along this topic, little pearl of wisdom that you want to leave with the folks here that are listening?
Yeah, I guess, the biggest thing is, going back to habits and time. When you're working within an institution, time, gets away, right? You don't know where your time is being, you know where your time is being spent sometimes. And it's hard to make the time to do some of these things. And so whether you do it yourself or you partner with somebody, the key is just making the time to do it. And if you can't make the time, you can either, make the time for yourself or go buy the time, right? I always say you can buy time, meaning you can go pay someone else to do it. And sometimes the better way to do it is go pay someone to do it. And I'm not doing that for any kind of self-promotion here, but that's just the reality of life. If you're busy, you got to buy some of your time back. And so the best way to do that is to go and partner with people.
There you go. That's a good pearl to leave. Tom, Brian's thoughts are interesting. What do you have to leave with folks here on the call today?
I mean, I think to me the largest takeaway, and the things I've really garnered the most from what you guys do is split testing and trying new things is absolutely critical. And unless and I'm just a comment, a few minutes back. If you're going to split test a voicemail message or a script for appointment setting or a new, different way to handle the career planning session or the interview, if you don't role play and practice those things and enforce the habits being done, it's not going to pay off. But you've got to at least try to experiment, try some new things, and really focus on split testing. And split testing is not just your website and your marketing tools. It's really all of your processes, but your admissions process. There are so many things that you can tweak in there that can make a 1% improvement 20 different ways. That's a 20% improvement is not out of the question, but you've got to try it. You've got to be willing to fail. And then you've got to also make sure that your people absolutely have a script or something that they're working from, and they're not just winging it. Otherwise, it does you no good to test.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Shane, how about you? These guys have left a couple nice little ribbons on this. What are your thoughts, bud?
As this talk was going on, I'm really glad that Brian had brought up that habits thing, because I think if there's an overarching lesson like path to improvement, it's willingness to challenge status quo, which is just a different way of saying what Tom and Brian have said. right? Like I have an operational roles, right? So my job here is to make sure things are delivered smoothly, that we innovate new stuff, that we find better ways of today or tomorrow than today, right? That's our job here. And I find a lot of those ideas come out at saying, well, hey, why do we do it that way? What was that deliberate? How did that happen, right? Or can we do better? And always re-challenging existing ideas. And so that's breaking that habitual behavior, at least being aware of it, right? Or the unconscious behavior. I think because that's the foundation for innovation, right? And the split testing and the 1% improvements, that's an expression of innovation. And the foundation for it is like challenging status quo. And if you can't do that, then there will never be innovation, and someone else is going to out-hustle you, and you're going to end up the second place guy to the Usain Bolt in your market.
So innovation and breaking out of ruts and what have you is really, so folks on the call, you don't need to have any superb special skills. You just have to have a willingness to take a little thing, be open to testing and kind of breaking the status quo, and then trying to beat the control through testing. Take tiny little things and methodically do that. And so with the talk today, what it's brought back for me is that in enrollment management, what we're doing is we're trading in seconds and groups of little words. And that's really where the juice gets squeezed and the value is created for helping our schools get more kids on a great path to a new career. And it's seconds and it's words. So folks on the call start thinking around that kind of context. Makes marketing and admissions easier if you're playing at a granular level. So just before we peel off on the call here, if anybody wants to ask a question of Tom or Brian or Shane or I, we're here to help you. If you want to be on a podcast, just press *6 and ask a question. We'll just wait a few seconds, and if nobody clicks, then we'll say goodbye. So.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, there's a brave person. Who's this?
Hey, it's just Chris. I'm not that brave.
Oh, hi, Christy. Okay.
I have a question from Bridget, I believe for Brian. She was wondering if you know the name of the book regarding habits that you had recently read.
Yes, I have studied habits because obviously it goes into training and development, breaking habits, status quo. And last year, a book by the name, the author's name is James Clear. The book is called Atomic Habits. It went into my top probably 10 book I've ever read just in that area on willpower, habits, and just people. So that's the name of the book.
There's another book, Shane, another book, you guys, that speaks to the anatomy of a habit, and I forget the exact name of it, but Shane, it's by Charles Duhigg. It's a yellow book.
The Power of Habit.
The Power of Habit as well. Excellent book.
Yeah, okay. Both of them are really good.
Any other questions? I know we have about 150 on the call here today. Sometimes we have shy people listening, and sometimes very boisterous. Anyone want to weigh in or ask a question? Press *6. Nope. Okay, well, I think what we'll do is we're going to wind up. We've had a long, kind of a vociferous conversation, and folks, if you have any questions about this topic and you want to go deeper, you can contact Brian. Just look up Brian Willett on LinkedIn, or you can talk to any of us at Enrollment Resources, and we're happy to personalize this conversation for you. But otherwise, go take those little bits of homework we've given you and go put it to work, and then watch your sales go up a bit. It'll be exciting. So take care, everybody, and knock 'em dead.
All right, thanks.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
This podcast is brought to you by Enrollment Resources, Innovations in Enrollment Management. Learn more at enrollmentresources.com.